Got pregnant by my boyfriend at 16, which was a foolish mistake, and now my parents are forcing me to give the baby up for adoption. I'm 16 and ended up getting pregnant by a guy I work with. He's 18 and about to graduate from high school, with plans to join the military afterward. We've never officially dated or been in a relationship, though I kind of wish we were. He doesn't seem interested in that. We're just friends, and he flirts with me sometimes. I lost my virginity to him, but it was my choice. There was no pressure. We've been intimate several times since then. I'm 15 weeks pregnant now, and while not everyone knows, the important people do. He knows, and so do my parents. Honestly, I'm ashamed. I feel stupid, like a joke, like trash. All I want is to hide away until after the baby's born. The thought of leaving the house feels unbearable. My parents are basically forcing me to give the baby up for adoption. I live in a state with strict abortion laws, and it's far too late to consider that now anyway. Plus, my parents don't believe in abortion. They've made it clear that this is my punishment for getting pregnant, and that I deserve to go through this. They've already arranged a meeting with an adoption agency and decided I'm giving the baby away. They've made it clear they won't let me ruin my life with a baby, and they're definitely not going to raise it themselves. They keep saying, "You'll thank us later." I definitely didn't plan on getting pregnant, and I'm nowhere near ready to be a mom right now. I'll turn 17 this summer, and I'm still only going into my junior year next year. The thought of going through pregnancy, giving birth, and then giving my baby away is honestly terrifying. I don't know how I'd be able to handle it. It makes me feel sick to my stomach just thinking about it. But I feel like I have no other option but to follow what my parents want. There's no way I could support myself, let alone take care of a baby. Doing it on my own feels impossible. I was too scared to consider getting an abortion earlier on before I told my parents. I was so afraid of getting in trouble, but looking back, I realized that might have been the simplest way out. If anyone reading this has been through giving a baby up for adoption, I'd really appreciate knowing what it was like. Do you ever get over it? Do you eventually feel like it was the right decision and find peace with it? OP's response to common questions. Raising a baby. Alone. I understand, and I'm not suggesting that I try to raise a baby on my own. I know it's not realistic. I would need a lot of help, which isn't an option given how my parents feel about the situation. So, even though technically it's my choice, I'm really backed into a corner with only one option available to me: the father and his knowledge of the pregnancy. Yes, he knows I'm pregnant, and he's aware that my parents are essentially forcing me into adoption. I think he's actually relieved that they've made this decision for us. While he might feel a little bad, he doesn't want to be a parent either, so he says things like, "Yeah, that's probably the best thing." Whether her parents are considering legal action against the father. I'm in the US, and he just turned 19 in April. My parents don't seem interested in taking any legal action against him. I honestly thought they'd confront him, demand to talk to his parents, or something like that, but they didn't react the way I expected. They're mad at him and blame him too, but they seem more focused on keeping him out of the situation, probably so nothing interferes with their plan for adoption. Update 1. I'm now 20 weeks pregnant and will be turning 17 in just a few weeks. Unfortunately, my parents are still determined to force me into giving my baby up for adoption. We've already met with an adoption agency. During the meeting, the adoption counselor asked to speak with me privately, away from my parents, and asked me a series of questions. I was honest and told her that I didn't want to give my baby up, but I felt like I had no other choice. She seemed to sympathize and reminded me that ultimately, I will have to sign the papers after the baby is born. My parents can't do it for me. Despite this, without my parents' support, I feel like I have no options. The counselor also mentioned the possibility of my parents adopting the baby themselves, but they aren't interested in raising another child, which I guess is a relief. My parents are now pushing me to look at potential adoptive families. It's such a strange and surreal feeling to be looking through profiles of people who could become the parents of my child. I know I'm not ready to be a mom, but this process feels incredibly weird and disconnected, like it's not really happening to me. I've spoken with the baby's father. He recently graduated from high school and is preparing to leave for basic training later this summer. He seems okay with the idea of adoption and doesn't think we have many other options. We've talked about getting married, as that would provide us with military benefits like housing and healthcare. However, I can't get married without my parents' consent. And the idea of getting married at 18 to someone who doesn't truly want to be with me feels awful. Another option might be for his parents to step in and help take care of the baby until I'm 18 and no longer need my parents' permission to get married. But that doesn't seem fair to them. He could also try to contest the adoption, but there's no guarantee his objections would be considered. His parents, though I don't know them well, seem like good people. They've expressed concerns about how this will affect their son's future, but they also told my parents that they believe this should be our decision. My parents, on the other hand, are adamant that it's their job to protect me and that all the responsibility will fall on me ruining my life. When our families met to discuss everything, it quickly became clear that it wasn't a conversation. It was just my parents telling them what was going to happen. His family and my boyfriend didn't really get a say. OP's reply to common questions. On the ideal adoption situation, I honestly don't have an ideal adoption situation because I'm still struggling to accept the idea of adoption. But if I had to choose, I think I'd feel most comfortable with 2 gay men. There's something about the women in these couples that sometimes feels less genuine, at least in the profiles I've seen so far. I know that might sound awful to say, but it's just a gut feeling I've had. Maybe I'd also consider a lesbian couple, as they've come across as more authentic to me than some of the straight women. In some cases, these gay couples could have their own biological children, even if the child doesn't share both parents' DNA. But overall, I'm just more drawn to those couples. That being said, no one really feels good enough for my baby right now, which might not seem rational, but it's how I feel. If you've never been in the position of having to choose complete strangers to raise your child, it's hard to fully understand the emotional toll. I'm allowed to be picky. This is the biggest, most important decision of my life, and it's the only part of the adoption process where I have any control. I'm only 20 weeks pregnant, not 38, and there's no rule saying I have to pick a family right now. People take longer to pick out a new car, and I wasn't the one who chose adoption in the first place, so of course I'm going to have some feelings about it. It's not about whether I can provide a better life. It's just the bizarre and heartbreaking reality of reading through profiles of families who could end up raising my child. There are so many families out there, and it's overwhelming. Update 2. I'm not sure why my post from a week ago is suddenly getting so much attention, but I thought I'd share an update since a few things have changed. On Friday, I had an ultrasound and found out I'm having a baby boy. He's already fully formed and just needs time to grow. I saw his head, nose, and even got a picture of his little feet because he was lying sideways at first, and we had to get him to move. It almost looked like little footprints. I could clearly see his hands and everything. Even though I mentioned this before, people are still sending me information about abortion. I appreciate that they're trying to help, and I do wish I had reached out earlier when I first found out I was pregnant. I didn't know about the option to have pills mailed to my house. But now, I can't go through with an abortion. I've seen him, and he's more than just a lump of cells. I've even named him. Abortion won't solve my problem because the real issue is how I'm going to live with the idea of giving him up for adoption. Now that I know he's a baby moving around inside me, I can't mentally handle the idea of giving him up or having an abortion. I understand I made a mistake by getting pregnant, but this is my baby, and I don't want anyone else to have him. The idea of handing him over feels unbearable. After the ultrasound, I sent the baby's father the pictures. He wasn't there because my parents don't want him or his family involved anymore, likely because I told them he offered to marry me. They got mad when I even considered it. I told him I can't go through with the adoption and asked if his parents were serious about helping and if he would hate me for keeping the baby. He said he wouldn't hate me, but I still worry he'll blame me for ruining his life. He's already said he thinks adoption is the best choice. We talked about marriage, but it feels ridiculous to think about. He mentioned he doesn't see why he would cheat on me and said he likes me. He wouldn't have slept with me if he didn't. But he also said he didn't see the point of a relationship because he was leaving soon, and it was just easier this way. I know I'm not the only girl he's been with during this time. I'm not naive enough to think I'm special to him or that he loves me. We both know the idea of us being married seems unrealistic, but with a baby on the way, that's what we'd have to do. I can't really picture myself as a wife, but maybe it wouldn't be so bad. At least I'd get away from my parents. He said it's weird to think about, but I don't have many options, and he doesn't know what else to offer. He's going to talk to his parents about it since I'm too shy. I assume his parents are probably relieved that my parents are pushing for adoption, but he says they aren't like that. I feel like I'm an inconvenience to everyone, and if I keep my baby, maybe he'll end up resenting me too. I don't want to mess up my baby's life, and I would do everything I could to be a good mom. I'd grow up, learn how to be a wife, mom, and adult. But I can't imagine giving my baby to someone else. Lastly, for those messaging me to adopt my baby, please stop. Many people have already reached out, and I just delete the messages. It feels creepy. If I do decide to place my son for adoption, it won't be with anyone I meet here. I'm sorry, but it's uncomfortable to be contacted by strangers about this. Update 3. I'm now 24 weeks pregnant and just turned 17. My parents are still trying to force me into giving my baby boy up for adoption. As I've mentioned in my previous posts, I really don't want to go through with it. We've met with adoption agencies and even looked at potential families, but the idea of giving my baby away feels unbearable. I honestly don't think I could live with that decision, knowing my child is out there with strangers, possibly even feeling like a burden to them. My parents are adamant that if I keep the baby, I'll be completely on my own. They've made it clear they won't help in any way. Thankfully, the father's family has stepped up to offer support, even though he isn't my boyfriend. We were never officially in a relationship, we were just friends. I know how that sounds, but it's the truth. Despite the circumstances, his parents have been much kinder throughout this whole ordeal. I'm getting to know them better now since they've been the only real support system I have. His parents aren't thrilled about me being pregnant, but they believe it should have been my decision whether or not to keep the baby. They feel it's their responsibility to help us since I chose to continue the pregnancy. The father of my baby has just started basic training for the military, which is something he's always wanted to do. His dad served, his brother is serving, so it's a family tradition. The plan is for us to get married when his family and I travel to his graduation. I'm worried that he might change his mind before then, though he hasn't said anything to suggest he would. It's just a fear I can't shake. There wasn't enough time to marry before he left, but we'll do it after his basic training. Once he finishes his tech school, which will take over a year, the baby and I can move to wherever he's stationed, or I can stay with his family until then. Staying would allow me to finish high school, and that's something I'm leaning towards because I'd prefer to graduate rather than getting a GED. My parents are refusing to sign the papers for me to take the GED early, but strangely enough, they've agreed to sign off on me getting married. I don't understand them. Why would they rather I get married and move away, instead of letting me and the baby live at home until I'm 18 and finish school? It doesn't make any sense to me. As a parent, I wouldn't let my 17-year-old get married, especially not under these circumstances. If it were between letting me marry or supporting my decision to keep the baby, I feel like they should have chosen to help me. But they didn't. They've essentially washed their hands of me, saying that if I'm going to marry him and have his family help, I'm no longer their responsibility. They yelled at me, called me names, and locked me in my room. They've made it clear that I could return to being the daughter they love if I went along with their plan, but things will never be the same between us again. His parents have been the only ones advocating for me. They even met with my parents to help them see things from my perspective. His family wants me to finish school, and they're going to help me with childcare so I can. I'll be moving in with them before the baby is born, which feels strange and uncomfortable, but I'm at the point where I have to accept any help that's offered. Once we're married, I'll be covered under his military insurance, and the baby will be as well. Of course, I'm not planning to rely solely on military benefits. I'm looking at the bigger picture. After I graduate, I plan to get certified in a career that pays well and offers stability. I'm not interested in going to a traditional four-year college, even though my parents are pushing for it. I get good grades and did well on the PSAT, so they think I should aim higher. But the truth is, I don't want to take on student loans or spend years in school. I want to be smart about my future and choose a career path that allows me to support my child as soon as possible. I'm scared. I've never done anything like this before. I've basically turned my whole life upside down by getting pregnant and refusing to follow my parents' plan. It's like I don't even have parents anymore. I never thought my relationship with them would end up like this. Sometimes I wonder if it would be easier to just go along with their plan. I could go back to my old life and have their love and support again, but I know deep down that I'd regret it for the rest of my life if I gave up my baby. What I'm doing now may be the hardest option, but it feels like the only one that I won't spend the rest of my life hating myself for. It's scary to think about getting married, living with strangers, and becoming a mom and a wife before I'm even legally old enough to drink. Moving across the country is intimidating, but at least I won't be stuck in this toxic environment anymore. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm taking on so much, and I worry I'm not ready, but I'd rather take this path than the alternative. At least this way, I can hold my head high, knowing I fought for my child. Update 4. Hi everyone! Since my last post, I've received over 100 messages. Some were incredibly supportive, and I even cried happy tears because it's hard to believe how kind and encouraging strangers can be. I don't have a lot of support in real life, so those messages really touched me. On the other hand, some messages have tried to convince me to choose adoption, while others have been outright cruel and also made me cry. But the most disturbing messages are from people wanting to adopt my baby, even after I clearly ask them to stop. So, once again, I'm not giving my baby up for adoption. If I did, I certainly wouldn't choose someone who messaged me out of the blue. To anyone doing this, please stop. You're giving adoptive parents a really bad image. I understand why some people think adoption might be the best option, but that's not the path I'm choosing. I've made my decision to keep my baby. I know it's going to be extremely challenging, and I'm terrified of all the sacrifices and responsibilities ahead, but I've committed to my choice. At this point, what would really help is advice from military spouses or anyone who can guide me through this transition. I want to prepare myself, so any resources or information, military or otherwise, would be greatly appreciated. I'm not planning to go to a 4-year college right away, maybe later if it aligns with my life. Right now, my focus is on completing high school or getting my GED, and then exploring other options. I want to get certified in something that will lead to a stable, well-paying career as quickly as possible. I don't think it's unrealistic. There are plenty of trades that pay well and don't require a traditional college degree. If anyone has career suggestions that might suit my situation, I'd love to hear them. As for parenting advice, particularly for newborns, I'd appreciate any tips you can share. On a more lighthearted note, I'm wondering, since I'm getting married at the courthouse and I'll be visibly pregnant, should I still wear a white dress? My parents would say no, but they aren't involved in this, so they don't get a say. I'm not planning on wearing a formal gown or anything, just curious what others think. I'm not naive enough to believe that marriage, parenthood, or being a military spouse will be like a Hallmark movie. I know this path will be tough, but I believe it's the best option for me. My partner and I have decided to get married. He's the one who initially suggested it, and this is the plan we've both agreed on. Of course, I know he could change his mind before his graduation, and I'm trying to stay realistic about that possibility. We'll be able to communicate before then, so if his feelings change, I expect him to tell me. We're planning to get married the weekend of his graduation. His family and I will be there, and after the wedding, I'll return home with them. For now, I'm getting ready to move in with his parents before the baby is born. It's strange and uncomfortable since I don't know them well, but at this point, I'm grateful for any help. I'll eventually move to wherever he's stationed so we can raise our son together. His parents shouldn't have to be the ones raising our baby. This way, he can be an active father despite his military commitments. At home, things remain incredibly tense between me and my parents. They constantly remind me that my decision to keep the baby is foolish, and that I'll be doing this all on my own without their support. I spend most of my time in my room, and I'm thankful for my part-time job, which gives me a break from the negativity. I've been keeping myself busy with research and planning. Lastly, to clear up any confusion, it wasn't statutory rape. He was 17 when I got pregnant, turning 18 just days after. He didn't coerce me, and we both made mistakes. I'm not doing this because I think having a baby will be fun or easy. I know it's going to be the hardest thing I've ever done. But I love my son, and I'm committed to being his mom no matter what challenges come my way. Yes, adoption might make some things easier, but I know it's a decision I would regret for the rest of my life. Thank you for watching! If you enjoyed our stories and would like to hear more, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you captivating tales and new content every week. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We appreciate every one of you for being a part of our storytelling journey.